getting folks back into the office is going to be a logistical minefield. It's going to require a lot of thinking and drafting and planning. So explain, first of all, how something as simple and basic as the elevator is just one of the many, many steps that these firms need to really address and plan for.
Yeah, I think the way you put it, a logistical minefield is probably the best way to describe it. I think it seems like a lot of the big banks are really thinking about these spaces within their headquarters that really cause a lot of folks to congregate and gather. So you think the elevators, you think maybe the cafeteria or the different pantry-like spaces, or even things like the entrances. And so they're really trying to craft plans that kind of give specific details around how to manage those spaces where they'll have thousands of employees streaming in every single day.
So, Jenny, I'm glad you used the word congregate, because the whole trend in office space over the last decade, 2 decades, has been to try to create spaces specifically that encourages all the employees to gather and congregate together. You have a lot of trading desks out there where people are basically sitting most likely less than 6 feet apart. How do these banks plan to address that issue with regards to people sitting at their desk?
Yeah, it's interesting because it seems like, we heard from actually a couple of Goldman's top traders earlier this month making the point that, a lot of their folks sit as close as 3 feet apart. And so obviously in an era of social distancing, that just does not work. And so they're really starting to think through that. And so it's an important question, and when we'll see how they decide if it's maybe, at least initially, probably a much slower return in terms of maybe having only a small percentage of employees come back at a time. But that also does leave open the question of what happens long term. Do they have to get more office space, or does it just mean longer term more people are working from home and kind of a more permanent situation?
Yeah, all these are questions that can't be answered right away. So when it comes down to it, Jenny, do we have any sense of the timeline here in terms of how quickly banks are hoping to bring back some of their workers, and perhaps how long it'll take before they can get back to 100% capacity in the office?
So every bank has, I think, a slightly different plan. Citigroup, it's our understanding that executives there were presenting to the board just last week and saying their entire strategy is data and not dates. And so they're really basing all of their decisions on local data that shows, transmission rates and how the virus is progressing in each individual city that they have operations in. So they don't have a set plan in terms of dates that they expect to see people back in the office. And I think that kind of sentiment and caution is really reflected across the industry. So I think slow is probably the best answer we have for your question at this time, but it'll be very interesting to see how quickly they're really able to bring it from 10% back to the office to 50% back, and then ultimately, hopefully, to 100% back.